the first person who has to believe it is you. And the first thing you have to get to understanding is the most important story you'll ever tell is the one about you and yourself. And so what I would encourage you is to live your dash. And what exactly is the dash? It's the line between the moment you were born and the moment you pass away. All you can do is live that dash, live that now, live that story that you want to leave behind. And you can do this by simply surrounding yourself with people that nourished your vision. The impact that those individuals have and the impact that podcasts like this one have in our life is phenomenal and oftentimes overlooked.
Today's guest is Miguel Lebron, a personal growth strategist, and his experience as a keynote speaker spans over 20 years. Having worked with multiple non-profit organizations, Miguel has become a powerful community organizer and leader known for practical strategies empowering personal and professional growth. Miguel is the CEO of Miguel Lebron Coaching LLC and the host of a Strategy Rewind, a podcast that focuses on mindset and strategies needed for a breakthrough moment. His focus on community, his love for family, and his dive for legacy have allowed him to become an ever more emotionally intelligent father, husband, leader, mentor, and keynote speaker. Welcome, Miguel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Anita.
My pleasure. I'm so excited for our conversation. So, what is one of the most courageous things that you have done?
Recently, I decided to enter a speaking competition. And so for the first time ever, I went to Canada. A lovely place, was nearby the falls, so it was an awesome view. And I took part in a competition, speaker competition. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. I've been a public speaker for a long time, but I never competed. And it was just awesome to be in that room with individuals of just some heavy hitters with powerful stories and that really resonated. And so that was one of the most daring things I've done recently, just kind of stand on that stage and compete.
Wow. That sounds absolutely terrifying as well. So, yeah, definitely courageous. That's brilliant. And well done for doing it. We've all got to step out of our comfort zones, and that's a brilliant way to do it.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
definitely. So, what took you on your journey of being a pastor for the Assembly of Christian Churches for nearly 10 years? Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so my wife and I, we were going out, and in the process of going out and getting to know each other, obviously, I got to know her family very well. It
Hmm.
just so happens, really by providence, that in the same time frame that we were getting married, her father had been called to pastoralship, and so he was getting ready to transition into that, and we made a choice, my wife and I, as we were getting married, that we were going to go support him. And when we went to go support him, it was very much trial by fire. We were all brand new to a lot of things, brand new to pastoralship, brand new to lifting up a community, and brand new to marriage. So there was a lot of newness there. And yet, as time progressed, I was able to be elevated into pastoralship. So my focus really was on the part of teaching and training. And that really became my focus, which is an area that I enjoy very much so. So I worked there for 10 years as the associate pastor, and I worked there. Focus was on training, was on mentoring and developing training material for individuals that were coming in, individuals that maybe wanted to learn how to public speaking or things of that nature.
Wow, that's exciting, especially so is that how you got into your personal growth and personal development, or was that separate?
It was kind of parallel. A lot of my experience
Mhm.
started off in the church. When I was 15 years old, I met a mentor of mine. I had a mentor of mine who was actually a pastor, but he
Mhm.
was much more than a pastor. He really showed me how to how to be a person of valor, a person of honesty, a person of word. He taught me how to tie a tie. So it was multi-layered, but that relationship was also a relationship where he would push me beyond what I would have at that time as perceived limitations. So really my journey into personal growth started at the age of 15, and then obviously there's a
Mm.
maturation process. So by the time I'm an associate pastor and I'm instructing and I'm mentoring and I'm leading, there is a lot of applied lessons there. And certainly when I decided to launch Miguel Lebron Coaching LLC, a lot of that was inspired from the work I had already done with other nonprofit organizations when I worked as an associate pastor, and even dating back to when I was 15 years old.
Wow, that's brilliant. I can see how the two do parallel, come into parallel. So that's really good as well. So tell me more about your coaching.
Yeah, so the coaching focuses on values and habits. That's really what I
Hmm.
enjoy doing. I enjoy helping individuals identify their values and then align those with their habits. So often we talk about accomplishing our goals and
Yeah.
wanting to have a successful year or month or day. And so what happens is that when we look deeper, we realize that our habits aren't really aligned with what we say is most important for us. So, an example of this would be the individual who says, "My family is the most important thing for me," but never spends a day with their family. Or the person who says, "My faith is so important to me," but never takes time to meditate, to read, or follow the disciplines of their faith. And so I really like to work with individuals, identify their values, and then begin to actually evaluate your habits, because we all have habits, we all have routines that we have established. And what we don't often actually look at is the triggers of those habits. An example of this would be when you wake up in the morning. Most often, individuals wake up because an alarm goes off. So the alarm is the trigger for me to get up. And then, of course, depending on what my day looks like, will either propel me to say, "Yep, I better get up," or I'm going to hit the snooze button. And so those are the ways that I like to work with individuals. Let's identify what your core values are, because I believe that that's a compass to align us to where we want to get to. And then we look at the habits, right? What are the habits,
Hmm.
number one, that we currently have? And then number two, what are the habits that actually align with our values? Then after that, it becomes really focusing on how do we accomplish the goals that we desire to accomplish and have that breakthrough moment.
That's brilliant because they are two of the core, absolutely core elements of our lives, how we focus. I mean, a lot of people do think survival is the number one most important thing we do, but actually, as humans, our habits is the number one key thing. If we can break our habits, you can do anything.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure. And a lot of these habits that we've created over time, they obviously started off from either an emotional place or an
mm,
intellectual place, right? We think about when we're going to go to work, if you're still commuting to work. If you're commuting to
mhm,
work, then what happens is that there may be multiple ways that appear on your Google Maps or whatever you're using to get there. There may be multiple ways, but most often, when we think about, okay, I have to go to work, or I have to go to school,
mhm,
or I have to go to XYZ place, most often we think about a route that we're most comfortable with taking. Even though there's a bunch of ways to get there, we think about the most comfortable way to get there. And habits are like that. Habits are the most comfortable way to do things. There's a bunch of ways to do it, but it's the most comfortable, the most common, the most routine way to do it. And oftentimes, we don't even realize that that way that we've been doing it for so long is tied to maybe a frustration or an irritation. Like I've heard
mm.
individuals who have said before, "I'm not going to have any kids." When you ask them, "Why aren't you having any kids?" "Well, I've made the personal decision." "Yeah, but why have you made this personal decision?" "Well, because I had horrible parents, or my parents weren't there the way I wanted to, and I don't want to do that for someone else." It's like your decision to not have kids, to not build a family, is brought by a negative experience. And that may
Mm.
be a big topic there, but when we dwindle it down, how often do we build out these micro habits in our day that are actually inspired because, well, somebody frustrated me or somebody irritated me, so I'm not going to say hi to anyone anymore, so I'm not going to be polite, so I'm not going to hold the door, so I'm not going to offer my services. And we look at all of these little events that take place, and they cause ripple effects on the routines that we hold,
Mhm.
on the habits that we have. And again, sometimes those habits don't even align with the true, authentic self that we want to be.
Absolutely, and they don't. I mean, the thing is, it's out of negativity. If you wipe the slate clean and start from afresh, I mean, your example of having children is only because that was their experience. So,
Mhm.
therefore, wouldn't you want to do better? People can do better. Be a stand for who you want to be, like you say. What are your core values? They are so many habits that are ingrained because they are learned behaviors.
Exactly. And a lot of that is tied to the story we tell ourselves. And that's
Mm.
another variable, right? So it's like these limiting beliefs that we often have are tied to the story we tell ourselves, where, when we talk about the perceived value that we have as children is often a derivative, number one, of the value that our parents give us, right? So if my one of the
Mhm.
things that I do with my daughters is that I tell them, you are smart, you're intelligent, you're wise, you are
Mm.
strong, you are courageous, you can do anything you want to do, you can be anything you want to be. I mean, I've been saying that to the point that my 10-year-old, when I say it, she starts reciting it. She's like, I know, Dad, I know what you're gonna say. And so what I'm doing there is I really want to train them up to understand their value. What happens is that our perceived value initially comes from that immediate tribe, right? Our parents, our cousins, or uncles. But then as we get a little older, we now want validation from the outside group. So our friends need to kind of validate what we do. And so our identity and our self value most often is tied to what other individuals say. I think it would be most beneficial for our society as a whole to begin to now infuse into individuals from a very early on age the value that they have, the intrinsic value that they have, so that even if Joe Schmo said, "Oh, you're ugly," or "You're this," or "You're that," it's like, don't you know that I'm smart, intelligent, wise, courageous, beautiful? Like, I'm all of these fantastic things. It's your loss. And so we begin to shape the conversation. We begin to change entirely, not just what one individual can do, but what this individual can impact many others to do.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more with you. I mean, it is. It's a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing now, more and more. It's about building up people, actually having a society where, we love each other, we want to share with one another, and we're there for one another. It's not about tearing each other down. Life has changed so much over the last, I would say, even couple of years.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, most certainly. I think that we have the tendency to look at the past with nostalgia. And so, I
Mhm.
can look at the past and say, it was better times. It's like, I don't know necessarily if it was better times. Like, we had to get up, walk to the TV, change the dial on the TV. It's like, I don't know if that was better necessarily. You can only watch TV until midnight because after midnight, they had the infomercials. It's like, I don't know that it's necessarily better. Now we have something called Netflix or Max or various
Mm.
streaming services where you can watch a program till whenever you want. And then you get to choose those programs, where before it was at this time they give this channel, they give this show, and if you missed it, you missed it. And of course, the advent of DVR kind of changed that. But the point that I'm trying to get at here is we look at the past often so emotional and so much nostalgia, and we tend to glorify the past. But if we actually dive a
Absolutely.
little deeper, there were some things of it that, the cell phone has changed so much what things used to
Mm.
be. I remember having to walk to the library to be able to get on a computer or to search books. Now I still believe in the power of going to the library. Every Saturday,
Mhm.
my wife, we take our children to the library, but it's such a powerful tool to know that if I really wanted to, I can also just open up a tablet or a phone, and I can search a book, and I can begin to listen to a book or read a book, or follow that particular individual that wrote the book. And so we see so much of the changes that have taken upon over the course of time. But some of the things that have stayed the same are the very things that
Mhm.
we oftentimes overlook, which is, again, the values and the habits and the stories we tell ourselves. So while so many things have changed, the root of our existence have kind of stayed the same, which is the story we tell ourselves really matters. And if you believe you can't, well, you can't. But if you believe you
Absolutely.
can, then you can.
I can't agree with you more. It's what do we tell ourselves? What are we thinking about? What are we putting on our heads?
Mhm.
Our thoughts. Absolutely. It really is. Change the story. You want a better story? Put in a better story. What's stopping you? Nothing other than yourself. People do follow behaviors that they have, like generational behaviors, even. Sometimes it's just break the pattern.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And so when we look at all of that, again, it goes back to, well, this is the way my mom did it, or this is the way my dad did it,
Mhm.
or this is the way a relative showed me. It's like you're looking at that story with such nostalgia. Break the emotion of that story and just look at it for what it was as an experience. And most often we're good at giving advice to a friend. So look at that situation as if it was a friend of yours. And then maybe there wouldn't be
Mhm.
so much nostalgia connected to it. And then you would realize, oh, wait a minute, I really had to deal with some things that weren't good, some things that weren't beneficial. I remember recently we were working with an individual who came to the realization that they had, parents that were narcissists. And that's a
Mhm.
big realization, because then you begin to question a lot of the motives behind, hey, why you should go to this school, or why you should do this task, or why you
Mhm.
should behave this way, where sometimes it was just self-serving to their parents and what they had to perceived of what a good reputation or good value would be. When we come to that
Absolutely.
realization where we can disassociate our own emotion from that story and just look at it for what it is, as a story, and say, okay, maybe that wasn't the best. Okay, now we can begin to say, well, did all of those things align with your values, with what you perceive to be the most important things in your life? And oftentimes when we talk about values, you can go to
Mhm.
Google right now and you can look up core values, and you're going to get a list of 700, 1,000, 500. To me, that's just way too much, because if everything is a value, then nothing is a value. And so the way I like to do it is, let's dwindle it down and we look at a compass. We have north, east, south, and
Mhm.
west. It's four
Mhm.
directions. I think you start off with what are your top four values, right? And when you start off with what are your top four values, then you can begin to say, okay, does what I'm doing align with this? Right. So one of my values is family. And so when I make
Mhm.
a decision of traveling, when I make a decision of taking time to be on a podcast like I'm doing here, I look at, okay, how does this affect my family? How does it affect the time that I spend with the family? And then I obviously have to look at having a conversation with my family. And that may not be necessarily a family meeting. It could just be with me and my wife and having the conversation. Hey, this is what I'll be doing at this time, at this moment.
Yes.
Anything going on, anything, is this going to affect anyone? And so when we talk about those values, we would always have to go back to them. We would always have to go back to them. Another value of mine is legacy. And legacy
Mhm.
for me is not just the way I'm going to be remembered when I have left Earth, but also how am I going to be remembered when I've left the room, when I've left
Yeah.
the area that I'm at? Am I leaving it better? Have I made positive impact? Or is it just going to be, well, there goes that guy, right? And so to me, that's legacy. So when I make a decision, like for example, going to Canada and going into this
Mhm.
speaker competition, obviously there's a desire to win, obviously, but there's also a massive desire to leave a legacy, to create impact, to be able to network, to be able to stretch out and influence individuals. And so despite the result that was had within the competition, to my very much pleasing surprise, a lot of the individuals, my peers and people that were in the room, spoke highly about how they were impacted with the words that we spoke. And that's legacy,
Mhm.
right? That's legacy. And so when I look at the trip, I was like, that's an overall success. So for you that are listening, that are connected here today, identifying your values and disassociating your emotions from your experience really is going to help you on identifying what is the life I want to live and what does the authentic me look like.
That's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And yeah, it is about, you know, what do you want to leave not only behind when you're gone, but when how you want to focus on how are you leaving your audience, how are you leaving the room,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
li- like anything, you want to leave it in a better situation than it was when you got there.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I podcast, right? So I host the podcast
Mhm.
Strategy Rewind. And the
Mhm.
reason that I podcast is really, it's almost selfishly the reason why I podcast. But the reason why I podcast is because I understand that one day I won't be here on earth. Right?
Yeah.
That's something that I think about often. I think about my mortality. And I know that there will be a day where I won't be present. And so I podcast so that when I'm gone, my daughters can always go back and listen to my thoughts and have this long range archive of what I thought about and what I held dear. And the reason that I think about my mortality is because, you know, I'm 35 years old, but I'm getting close to the age to when my mother passed away.
Okay.
And to think that I will in age pass the life that she lived is
Mhm.
a thought that really impacts my life and really forces me to think about how will I be remembered? How will I be
Mm.
considered? What will my daughters say? Will my wife say? What will Anita say when the podcast is over? And so I think about
Absolutely.
all of those things.
And yeah, that is one of my questions. We will come back to your podcast. And that's really nice and beautiful, beautifully explained as well. Thank you.
Mhm.
So you are, Miguel, a personal growth strategist. Tell me more about that. What's that actually involve?
Sure. So when we talk about strategy, strategy is
Mhm.
for me, strategy is a defined number of steps that'll help you obtain a breakthrough moment. And I say that for me because when I initially started working with individuals and decided, okay, I want to help individuals establish strategies, I began to look online. And you can do this. You can go online, you can look up the word strategy, and it's either going to be related to the war zone or it's going to be related to the boardroom. And I said, okay, well,
Okay.
there are people in the in between, right? There are people that will never go in the battlefield, and there are people that are just not
Mhm.
in the boardroom. They're not part of these Fortune 500 meetings. So, what do we do with the everyday individual, with the everyday mom who is trying to balance life and school, or the
Mm.
dad who is trying to do these things, or the single parent, or all these people who are trying to restore their lives? Or what do we do with these individuals, or the young person who is trying to actually navigate life and coming to age? How do we support them, and what is strategy? And so this is where I really worked out a definition where strategy is a defined number of steps to help you obtain a breakthrough moment. And one of the things that we need to really identify here is that success is a specific yet evolving endpoint. And I like to bring that
Mm.
up because as a personal growth strategist, we look at the values, we look at the habits, we look at what exactly is the goal you want to accomplish. And again, if the specific goal that you have, for example, is to lose weight or live a healthier life, well, then we
Mhm.
look at that goal, right? We say, okay, well, the goal is to live a healthier life. Great. How does this align to your values? And maybe one of your values is family. So, okay,
Mhm.
if you're healthier, you can spend more time with your family. You can run with the little kids. You can almost guarantee you're going to live a very long life. So, there it is. We now have this goal that ties to this value. So, there's a reason why I need to accomplish this goal. But furthermore, we then look at the habits. Okay, am I getting enough sleep? Am I drinking enough water? Am I eating healthy enough? Am I being active, even if it's just walking for 10 minutes a day, right? What am I doing that's leading to this particular goal that I have? And then the beautiful thing is that we look at the strategies, and the
Mm.
strategies are those particular pockets where, okay, what are the triggers? Are we actually becoming aware of how we're spending our time? Are we journaling our time? Are we becoming good stewards of our time? So, as a personal growth strategist, I help individuals that want to grow personally. And I believe that if we can grow personally, we will then have the value that the organizations are looking for. And thus, it is impossible that if we grow personally that we not grow professionally, right? If I continue to gain value as an individual, that value will be perceived not only by the people that surround me, meaning my direct community, but also the
Mhm.
organizations I work for. And thus, a promotion is going to be on the horizon. A promotion is inevitable.
Absolutely. Well said. Absolutely love it. That's really brilliant. I can't wait to hear more about your podcast as well. So going on to your podcast, Miguel, you host the podcast called Strategy Rewind, and the podcast focuses on mindset and strategies needed for a breakthrough moment. Tell me more about that.
So in the podcast, there are some episodes that I've done myself where it's
Mm-hmm.
just me kind of presenting particular thoughts or values or lessons that may apply from my personal life or maybe a derivative from an experience that I've had with a client. But then there are other episodes that I've recorded with individuals who are thought leaders, who are pastors, who are coaches themselves, who DJs and from various parts of life. We've spoken about marriage and grief. We've spoken about how to buy a home and various topics. And so we really look at all of these various parts of life and really dwindle it down to, okay, what is the strategy needed in order to accomplish this particular goal? So for the individual that's looking to accomplish a particular goal, can easily go through the archive and find the particular goal they're looking to accomplish, whether that be creating a community or actually finding their voice or communicating better, whatever that may be. And so the podcast really focuses on what is the mindset, number one, needed, and number two, what is the practical strategies. I really am not about making things complicated. There's too many complicated things in the world, Anita. I want to make it as simple as possible, as practical as possible. And I truly believe that, practical goals lead to a radical life. Oftentimes, we establish goals and it's like, we want to get to the moon. It's like, you want to get to the moon? Yeah. Okay. Are you good with algebra, with math? And what about floating? What about looking at stars from a high place?
Yeah.
Like, are you good with any of those things? No. All right. Well, maybe your goal isn't so practical. And practical goals again lead to a radical life, but practical goals require practical strategies. And that's really what we focus on in the podcast.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Got to think about the gravity there as well.
You gotta think about gravity.
So, what resources do you recommend, daily tips, tools to anyone that wants to start using strategies needed for breakthrough moments in their everyday life?
Yeah, for sure. So, for me personally, one of the things that I offer is the newsletter that we pull out, the Growth Strategy Spotlight, a newsletter that allows you to get direct access to the podcast, direct insight into articles that I've written. So you can definitely subscribe to that, right? So I present that. And of course, we also present the Strategy Rewind podcast within itself. But here's something that every individual can do right now. You can jump on your phone and you can go to Facebook, because most often you're already on Facebook. And then you want to hit the search tab and you want to look for groups. And when you look for groups, start putting in the search word of groups you want to be a part of. So if you want to learn how to cook, then look for cooking groups. If you want to learn how to ride a bike, look for riding bikes groups. If you want to learn how to paint or collect Pokemon cards, look for a group. Create a community of people that are investing in the same thing you want to invest in. Because what happens is that this energy creates synergy and you begin to create momentum. And the number one thing every individual wants on their side is momentum. I remember when I was a kid that we used to ride bikes, but oftentimes we would ride bikes going downhill. I don't know if you've ever done this before, Anita, but when you're riding a bike down a hill, you don't even need to pedal. In fact, I remember we used to lift our legs up and the bike would just go immediately fast down the hill. And that's called momentum, right? It's momentum. Notice how effortless that was and how fun that was. It's momentum. And when we build momentum behind the things we want to accomplish, we don't even think about it. It's just, we're just flowing. And we've often heard about that statement, the state of flow. When you get in that state of flow, it's because you just got momentum. Get into a community, surround yourself with people that nourish your vision. So certainly I would encourage you to listen to Strategy Rewind podcast. Certainly I would encourage you to be connected with our community that we're building. Go ahead and subscribe to our newsletter, which you can do by heading to strategyrewind.com. And there you'll get much access, be able to chat, be able to network. But one of the simplest things you could do is right now, whatever social media you're using, go ahead, look for groups and start connecting.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that. So, Miguel, where can the listeners find you online, your podcast? What's your website?
Yeah, for sure. So again, you want to go to strategyrewind.com. There you can subscribe to our newsletter and get direct insight and information with reference to strategy, personal growth, professional growth. But if you want to connect on a different level, you can definitely head over to miguellebron.com. When you go to miguellebron.com, there you'll find a bunch of information of what we're doing and all of the social media handles. So I like to keep it real simple. Just head over to miguellebron.com, and there you'll find information on how to connect to Facebook, to Instagram, to now it's X. It used to be Twitter. And of course, all the other social media platforms we're on. For those individuals, for you that are connected right now, listen, most often what stands in our way is the story we tell ourselves. And we think that we deserve misfortune, or we think we deserve to have this life, or we think we deserve. And the truth of the matter is that you individual, you are listening, you are smart, you're intelligent, you're wise, you're strong, you're creative. And maybe your environment right now doesn't seem like that is the truth, but it is the truth. And when the first person who has to believe it is you. And the first thing you have to get to understanding is the most important story you'll ever tell is the one about you and yourself. And so what I would encourage you is to live your dash. And what exactly is the dash? It's the line between the moment you were born and the moment you pass away. All you can do is live that dash, live that now, live that story that you want to leave behind. And you can do this by simply surrounding yourself with people that nourish your vision. The impact that those individuals have and the impact that podcasts like this one have in our life is phenomenal and oftentimes overlooked.
Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. That's brilliant. Miguel, thank you for sharing your courageous journey with us today. And by doing so, I know you have helped so many people. Miguel Lebron.
Thank you, Anita.
So my last question to you is, as we are all about Create the Courage to be Fearless podcast, what is your definition of courage?
So courage to me is not the absence of fear, but it's what we do in the face of fear. And so to me, that really is the definition of fear. It's if you're afraid, does it matter? Right? What impulses me more? Is it the fear? And so, I've often presented it this way. It's like, am I more afraid of accomplishing the goal and possibly failing, or am I more afraid of stagnation, of being stuck? So courage is the ability to make a choice even in the difficult time. It's the ability to, in the fork of the road, say, you know what? This may not come out the way I wanted to, but I'm going to make this decision anyways, of being better, of surrounding myself with people that nourish my vision, of being healthier mentally, emotionally, physically, economically, of leaving a legacy. And even if it doesn't come out the way necessarily I want, I'm going to pursue that because, well, the option is stagnation. And I'm more afraid of stagnation than what I am of failure or perceived failure.